Okay, so we shall take up the next chapter under the GIT, that is drugs which are used for peptic ulcer. Coming to the outline of the chapter, first we shall cover the regulation of gastric acid secretion, that is what are the different mechanisms which are controlling the acid secretion in the stomach basically. Next part is the classification of the drugs which are used in the treatment of ulcer. Then the individual classes, that is H2 antihistamines or proton pump inhibitors, which are also known as PPIs, is the accepted short form for that. Then anticholinergic drugs or prostaglandin analogs is the next class. Antacids. Next is the ulcer protectives, and the last one is the anti-H. pylori drugs. Now coming to the first part, that is the regulation of gastric acid secretion. Okay. Now before going into the actual regulation of the gastric acid secretion, let us see what exactly is happening in the pathophysiology of the peptic ulcer. Okay. So usually this peptic ulcer, it occurs in the part of the GIT which is exposed mainly to the gastric acid and the pepsin. So these are the aggressive factors. Okay, that is acid. You are already aware of that. Stomach, in the stomach region, acid is generated and it is released. Even the pepsin, it is secreted in the stomach. Okay, so basically these two, that is gastric acid and pepsin, these may be exposed to certain parts of GIT like say stomach and to the duodenum, which is the first part of the intestine. Into the gastric chyme will enter. Okay, so these two parts are mainly exposed to this gastric acid and pepsin. So basically these are the two regions in your GIT which may develop this ulcerative conditions. Okay, so basically this ulcer, it is precipitated because of an imbalance in between the two factors. The two type of factors like say aggressive factors and the defensive factors. So in your GIT there are certain factors which are aggressive in nature, so which will, when they are secreted in the excessive amount or when they are present, they may attack the gastric mucosa and may start damaging it. Like say for example acid or pepsin or bile and H. pylori. It is a type of infection in your GIT which may result in ulceration. Okay, so these are all the aggressive factors. And there are certain defensive factors which protect your gastric lining. Okay, maybe by forming a protective layer or maybe by controlling certain blood flow or certain formation of protective layers or whatever. Okay, so these defensive factors include the gastric mucus, okay, the mucus which is produced, and the bicarbonate is also secreted in the stomach. That's what is already covered under the anatomy, the secretions of the stomach. So bicarbonate is also present in the gastric secretions. Then the prostaglandins we have covered under the autocoids. We have seen that they are ulcer protective in nature. Okay, mucus production is increased, blood flow is increased. Okay, bicarbonate secretion is increased. Then the nitric oxide is one more protective factor, okay, or defensive factor. Okay, it is actually a smooth muscle relaxant. Okay, so the smooth muscles in the blood vessels may be relaxed and that's how the blood flow may increase. Okay, then high blood flow. If there is more amount of blood flowing to your GI, it is actually a defensive mechanism. Okay, then the innate resistance of the mucosal cell, okay, towards the aggressive factor. So these are all the defensive factors. So whenever there is an imbalance between these two, that is aggressive factors, that is these ones, and the defensive factors, that is these. Whenever there is increase in the aggressive factors and decrease in the defensive factor, so it may result in the imbalance and it can precipitate the ulcers. Okay, now usually in the gastric ulcers, acid secretion is either normal or it may be even low also. Okay, and in case of duodenal ulcer, when duodenum is affected, acid secretion is high in 50% of the patients, and in the remaining individuals it may be normal. Okay, now as you can see from this that it's not necessary that in case of peptic ulcer there should be increase in the acid secretion. Okay, so no doubt acid is an aggressive factor, whether it is present in the normal amount or whether it is present in the high amount. Obviously, whenever there is some kind of mucosal damage, it will contribute to the ulceration as an aggressive factor. Okay, whatever the level it may be. Okay, so that's one of the main approach for the treatment of these ulcers. So acid secretion may be reduced, or acid may be neutralized. So these become a main basis for the treatment of ulcers. Okay, then coming to the control of the secretions. Okay, basically the main aggressive factor is your acid. So this becomes an important target for the drugs. Okay, so now let us see how exactly this acid is produced and what are the different controlling factors. Okay, so that will again give an idea about the targets for the anti-ulcer drugs. Okay, so now there is an enzyme which is known as a proton pump. Okay, so that is an H plus K plus ATPase. Okay, now this proton pump, which is present in the GI tract, in the mucosal membrane, it is actually responsible for generation of that acid. It secretes the H plus ions, okay, which is generated mainly by the parietal cells of your gastric mucosa. Okay, so this pump is located in the parietal cells. Okay, and it is responsible for actually the generation of the acid. Okay, now this proton pump, which is responsible for generation of the acid, it can be activated by these three, that is histamine, acetylcholine, that is ACH, or gastric hormone, which is released of course by the GI mucosa itself. So these are the three physiological secretagogues, that is they are present in the body, and as per the requirement they control actually the release of the acid. Okay, so acid, it is important for digestion. Okay, so acid secretion is required, it's a normal process. Okay, but too much acid production is not good for health. Okay, so all these three can control the secretion of the acid by their action on this proton pump. Okay, so the receptors through which these three act, okay, they have specific receptors through which they act onto this proton pump, and they can stimulate the proton pump. Okay, so then more and more acid is generated. Now out of these three, this one is the main culprit. Okay, that is histamine. Histamine, which is acting mainly through the H2 receptors. Okay, H2 receptors are responsible for activation of this proton pump. So this plays a dominant role in increase in the secretion of the acid in the stomach. Okay, because these other two, that is gastrin and ACH, they partly act directly onto this proton pump, and mainly it acts indirectly by release of the histamine. Okay, so this one is the main one which is responsible for acting on this proton pump, so that more and more acid is secreted. Okay, so these two they as such directly do not have much of influence on the proton pump, but they will indirectly act through release of histamine. So this could be a very important target for us. So H2 receptors, when stimulated, okay, it will by histamine mainly, so it is responsible for activation of the proton pump, which will cause more and more acid release. So this is a very important target. Apart from this, anticholinergic drugs also could be a very important target again. Okay, so which can reduce the gastric acid secretion. Okay. Now, with this brief introduction, let us see what are the different goals of anti-ulcer therapy before going into the actual drugs. The first goal should be relief of pain, because you all must have already studied that there is a pain in the abdominal region. Okay, usually this pain subsides after you consume the food. Okay, so specifically abdominal pain will be experienced by the patient. So your target should be relief of pain. Then ulcer healing. Okay, whatever ulcers are formed into your gastric mucosa, so healing of that should be promoted. Then next is prevention of the complications, like say for example bleeding, internal bleeding may take place perforations may take place in the GI mucosa. Okay, so that those complications you should be able to prevent by certain utilization of certain drugs. The next goal is the prevention of the relapse. So once the symptoms have subsided, certain drugs, when you stop the treatment, the symptoms may make a comeback. Okay, so that condition is known as a relapse. Okay, so prevention of relapse is one more goal when you are selecting a anti-ulcer therapy. Okay, now with this, coming to the classification of the drugs, first class is reduction of the gastric acid secretion. Okay, so the drugs which can reduce the gastric acid secretion, because we have seen that gastric acid, though whether it is normal or whether it is high, still it is an aggressive factor. So one of the important measure in the treatment of ulcer is the reduction of the gastric acid secretion. So it can be done by several ways. First and the very important one is the H2 antihistamines. The reason we have seen in the introduction that histamine through H2 receptors, it activates a proton pump which is responsible for acid secretion. So this is an important target, H2 antihistamines. Examples of drugs include cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine and roxatidine. Then next subclass which is used to reduce the gastric acid secretion is proton pump inhibitor. Okay, that is these are known as PPIs popularly. Okay, so proton pump. So these are the drugs which will directly inhibit that proton pump which is responsible for generation of the acid. Earlier the H2 blockers were quite popularly used, but since this class was introduced, these have superseded that H2 blockers. Okay, so nowadays these proton pump inhibitors are used quite popularly. Examples included under this is omeprazole, lansoprazole, pantoprazole, rabeprazole, esomeprazole and dexrabeprazole. Then the third class, which is subclass which is responsible for reduction in the gastric acid, is anticholinergic drugs, because we have seen the involvement of the ACH in the secretion of the acid. So drugs like pyrazipine, propenthalin and oxyphenonium, which fall under anticholinergic properties or anticholinergic class, having anticholinergic properties, so that can be used to reduce the gastric acid secretion. Then the last class under this is prostaglandin analog. Okay, that is misoprostol. Okay, because we have seen that prostaglandins also can reduce the gastric acid secretion. Apart from that, they can enhance certain protective or the defensive factors also. Okay, that is mucus production or bicarbonate production. So misoprostol as a prostaglandin analog, it can be utilized to reduce the gastric acid. Then coming to the second class, so far we have seen drugs which can reduce the gastric acid secretion. Now coming to the next class, that is neutralization of gastric acid. Okay, that is antacid is the name of the class actually. So these act by neutralizing whatever gastric acid is released. Now there are two sub classifications under this, again depending upon how it is administered or how they act. Systemic antacids include sodium bicarbonate, sodium citrate, whereas non-systemic antacids which act locally. So these include the magnesium hydroxide, magnesium trisilicate, aluminium hydroxide gel, megalrate or calcium carbonate. These are the non-systemic antacids. And the third class is ulcer-protectives. Okay, so they will prevent the further damage and help in healing of the ulcers. So that is one of the goal of ulcer treatment. Okay, so examples included over here are sucralfate and colloidal bismuth subcitrate. That is CBS is the accepted short form for this particular drug. And the last class is anti-H. pylori drug. Since we have seen that H. pylori infection can also lead to ulcer, so it is one of the aggressive factors. So certain antibiotics which can inhibit this particular organism, okay, like amoxicillin, clarithromycin, metronidazole, tinidazole or tetracycline can also be utilized as anti-ulcer drug. Now coming to the first class, that is H2 antagonist. Okay, under the drugs which can reduce the gastric acid secretion, the first subclass is H2 antagonist, because we have seen the involvement of the histamine, okay, through H2 receptors. It can stimulate or activate the proton pump, which is responsible for generation of the gastric acid. Okay, so these are the drugs. So understanding this physiology, H2 blockers were tried, and these were the first highly effective drugs. But since PPIs, that is proton pump inhibitors, were introduced, this particular class has lost its first line treatment status, you can say. Okay, so these are no longer preferred drug. Nowadays preferred drugs are proton pump inhibitors. Okay, however, as this is the first kind of it which was effective, it is again discussed over here, and of course these drugs are also used. It's not that totally these particular drugs are gone out of use. Okay, now coming to the examples, as we have seen that 4 examples are nowadays utilized in India: cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine, and roxatidine. Okay, so basically they act by blocking this H2 receptor. Now if you can consider the mechanism of action of cimetidine, ranitidine, and roxatidine, they block this receptor by in a competitive manner, whereas roxatidine, it blocks the receptor in competitive, non-competitive manner. The famotidine, it blocks the receptor in the competitive, non-competitive manner. The first drug under the H2 blocker is cimetidine. Now coming to the pharmacological actions of cimetidine, the first one is the H2 blocker. Now all the H2 antagonists, not only the cimetidine, but all the H2 antagonists, they block the actions of histamine which are mediated through the H2 receptors. Okay, because it is a selective drug for blockage of the H2 subtype of the histaminergic receptors. Okay, so histamine induced actions like increased gastric secretion or cardiac stimulation or uterine relaxation and bronchoconstriction, all these actions are blocked by H2 antagonists. Apart from that, they also attenuate the fall in BP, which is because of histamine. Okay, especially the late phase response of the histamine, so that is attenuated or reduced. Okay, so also these particular drugs are highly selective. Okay, so usually they are more selective for H2 receptor. All the actions mediated through H2 receptors are blocked, whereas they have minimal action on the H1 receptor. So almost they have no effects on H1 mediated responses. Okay. Now next action is on the gastric secretion. Okay, so the only significant action of these H2 blockers pertaining to the gastric secretion is inhibition of the gastric secretion. So all the phases which are responsible for the gastric secretion, increase in the gastric secretion, maybe basal, okay, maybe psychic, okay, or psychological stimulus, or neurogenic or gastric stimulus, all of these phases of secretions are suppressed in a dose dependent manner. So as the dose increases, the secretion also is suppressed to a greater extent. Okay, then the secretory responses, not only to histamine but to other stimuli, are also attenuated. Okay, like say for example, apart from histamine, we have seen ACH is responsible for increase in secretion, or gastrin, or insulin, alcohol, food. So all of these stimuli which may result in secretion of gastric acid, so all of them are also attenuated. So it's not selectively or only responsible for blockage of H2 receptor, or only controlling the H2 receptor mediated gastric secretion, but all the other stimuli, okay, which may result in the secretion of the gastric acid, so that can also be controlled. Okay, apart from this, the volume or pepsin content, intrinsic factor secretion in the stomach, these are also reduced by the H2 blockers. Okay. However, the vitamin B12 absorption, this is not interfered with. Okay, so vitamin B12 deficiency does not occur, so that's not a problem. Okay, ulcer healing doses usually they result in the inhibition of acid output. Now if you can consider the overall acid production over 24 hours, so it produces 60 to 70% inhibition of the acid secretion over 24 hours period. Okay, as such these drugs, okay, can also control the gastric ulceration which is due to stress or drug induced ulcers, like say for example NSAIDs. We have seen that they as a side effect they can result in ulceration, cholinergic drugs or histaminergic drug. So all these conditions or drugs which may induce ulceration, so that can also be effectively controlled by the H2 blockers. Okay. However, motility as such or the LEA stone, these are not affected by H2 blockers. And coming to the pharmacokinetics, cimetidine, it is adequately absorbed orally, but bioavailability is just 60 to 80% due to first pass metabolism, and food doesn't interfere the absorption of this particular drug. Okay. Then apart from that, it can cross the placenta, then it can be secreted in the milk. Okay, but it cannot cross the blood brain barrier. Okay, because it is a hydrophilic drug, and we all are aware that any drug which is highly lipophilic in nature can only cross the blood brain barrier. So this does not have any CNS effect. Then coming to the metabolism part, it is generally metabolized by the oxidation reaction, and 2/3 of the drug is excreted in the unchanged form in the urine as well as in the bile. And the elimination T half life is just 2 to 3 hours. Okay, and in case if the patient is suffering from renal failure, dose reduction is required. You need to reduce the dose of this drug. Then coming to the adverse effects, cimetidine as such is well tolerated drug. Adverse effects are seen in only a very few patients, and that too the adverse effects are quite mild, like say for example headache, dizziness or bowel upset, dryness of mouth and rashes. Okay, but apart from this, cimetidine, but not the other H2 blockers. Okay, all the other H2 blockers don't have this particular side effect. It is only shown by the cimetidine. That is because it has anti-androgenic action. Okay, so it will displace the dihydrotestosterone from its cytoplasmic receptors. Okay, then it increases the plasma prolactin level, hyperprolactinemia is produced. Then also it inhibits the degeneration of the estradiol by the liver, so the estradiol levels are also increased. Okay, so because of all these there are certain reproductive problems which may be created by this particular drug, like say gynecomastia, female pattern of growth of the breast in the males, or loss of libido, that is sexual drive, or impotence may be seen, or sperm count may be reduced. So these are all the adverse effects which may be seen because of all these conditions. Okay. And then apart from this, plasma aminotransferases levels are also raised. Okay, but hepatotoxicity, okay, it is signified by increase in the levels of plasma aminotransferases SGOT, SGPT. So that indicates the liver damage. Okay, but liver damage is rare to occur. Then coming to the interactions of cimetidine, it inhibits CYP450 isoenzymes. Also, it reduces the hepatic blood flow. So it may inhibit the metabolism of several other drugs, and because of the inhibition of the metabolism, these drugs may show toxicity. For example, theophylline, phenytoin, carbamazepine, phenobarbital, sulfonylureas, metronidazole, warfarin, imipramine, lidocaine, nifedipine, quinidine. Okay, basically this lidocaine, its metabolism is hepatic blood flow dependent. So by reducing hepatic blood flow, it can inhibit the metabolism of certain drugs, or by inhibiting the metabolizing enzyme also it can inhibit the metabolism of these drugs. So it should not be combined, otherwise toxicity of these drugs will be precipitated. Next interaction is with the antacids. Antacids reduce the absorption of all the H2 blockers. Okay, so whenever both of these have to be combined, okay, H2 blockers and antacid both are used for peptic ulcer treatment. Okay, so when both are supposed to be combined, a gap of 2 hours has to be followed. Okay, because 2 hours is the gastric emptying time. Okay, so once one drug is administered, it will pass on to the intestines, and then next drug is administered. So staggered the administration. Next interaction is with ketoconazole. So absorption of ketoconazole is also decreased by cimetidine because it reduces the gastric acidity. Okay, so absorption of this ketoconazole is gastric acidity dependent. Okay, so that is the reason why absorption of ketoconazole does not take place appropriately. The next drug is ranitidine. Okay, this is a non-imidazole H2 blocker. It has a furan ring and it is 5 times more potent than cimetidine. Most of the properties are similar. Kinetic profile, T half-life, it is similar to cimetidine, but its duration of action, okay, it is longer than cimetidine. Also, acid suppression over 24 hours, that is also greater as compared to cimetidine. So it is more effective. Okay. Apart from this, the anti-androgenic action is not seen with the ranitidine. Even it does not increase the prolactin secretion, or estradiol metabolism is also not inhibited. So this is the reason why the sexual complications or the gynecomastia which occur with cimetidine are not seen with ranitidine. Okay. Then again, next property is that it is less lesser entry into the brain. Okay, so that's the reason why CNS effects are not seen with this particular drug. Again, metabolism of the other drugs is also not affected. Drug interactions are actually not significant with the use of this particular drug, like what we have seen with the cimetidine. Okay, and overall side effects, if you can see, so these are also lower, like the incidence is lower, like headache, diarrhea, constipation, and dizziness. Okay, and even their incidence is also similar to placebo. That means these are also maybe psychological or such kind of side effects. Okay, so side effect tendency with this particular drug is less. Okay, next drug is famotidine. This is a thiazole ring containing H2 blocker. Okay, specifically binds to this H2 receptors quite tightly and has a longer duration of action. Okay, which has a longer duration of action despite of its T half-life being quite short. That is 2.5 to 3.5 hours is the elimination T half-life. Still it acts longer because it binds to the H2 receptors quite tightly. If you can see the potency, it is 5 to 8 times more potent even as compared to ranitidine. Also anti-androgenic actions are lacking with this famotidine also. So also interference with the metabolism of other drugs. So that is also less likely because it has low affinity for CYP enzyme. So less likely to interact with the other drugs. Okay, then oral bioavailability with this particular drug is just 40 to 50%. And mainly excreted by the kidney, and almost 70% of whatever drug is absorbed in the systemic circulation, it is excreted in the unchanged form. Also the incidences of adverse effect is also low with this particular drug, like say for example only headache, dizziness or bowel upset, rarely disorientation and rashes may be seen. Okay, and then coming to the uses. Now, because of its higher potency, we have seen that it is quite potent, even 5 to 8 times more potent than ranitidine. So, because of its high potency, longer duration, okay, this particular drug is considered to be more suitable for the treatment of Zollinger-Ellison syndrome or for prevention of the aspiration pneumonia. Next drug is roxatidine. Again, this particular drug has a property similar to ranitidine. All its pharmacodynamics, pharmacokinetics, side effect profile, everything is similar to that of ranitidine. The only difference is that it is twice as potent as compared to ranitidine, and it is little bit longer acting as compared to ranitidine. So also this particular drug also has no anti-androgenic action, so less interference with the sexual behavior, or even inhibition of the CYP450 enzyme is also not significant with this particular drug. So interaction chances are also less with roxatidine. Coming to the uses of the H2 blockers or H2 antagonists, usually these are the drugs which are used wherein the main target is suppression of the gastric acid secretion. Okay, mainly used to reduce the gastric acid secretion. However, since proton pump inhibitors have come into picture, it has almost outstripped these H2 blockers. Okay, so preferably nowadays proton pump inhibitors are utilized. Now coming to the uses, it's not that totally H2 blockers have gone out of use. These are conditions for which it is used, like duodenal ulcer or gastric ulcer. Okay, whatever the ulcer type may be, either in the stomach region or in the duodenum. Okay, so both the type of the ulcers can be very well controlled by this particular agent. Okay, then next is stress ulcers. Okay, so certain stressful situations may also induce ulcers. So these type of ulcers which are associated with stress, so these can also be effectively controlled by the H2 blockers. Okay, then gastritis, that is inflammation of the stomach region. This could also be effectively controlled. Then next is Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, wherein there is excessive production of the acid. Okay, there are certain tumors, okay, which produce more amount of acid. Okay, then next uses gastroesophageal reflux disease, that is GERD, wherein the contents of the stomach may be it may be regurgitated into the esophagus and it may damage the esophagus. So to reduce the gastric acidity, it will help in this condition so that esophageal damage may be reduced. The next is prophylaxis of aspiration pneumonia. Okay, so these H2 blockers, these are given pre-operatively so that they can reduce the risk of aspiration of the acidic gastric content, okay, during the anesthesia or during the operative conditions. Then there are certain other uses. Okay, so H2 blockers, they have adjuvant beneficial action in certain cases of urticaria. Okay, now since they are histamine blockers, histaminergic receptor blocker, so this could be combined along with the H1 antagonist. Okay, so conditions in which, allergic conditions which are not controlled by H1 antagonist alone, so over there you can add these H2 blockers also. Okay, so it will be effectively controlled when both H1 and H2 blockers are given in combination.